Good morning. Welcome, and thanks for taking the time. My name is Milin Desai. I'm Vice President Products at NSX. Been at VMware 6+ years now, and started this thing called network virtualization. I think over the next 4 hours, we're going to talk NSX and SDDC. We're going to kick it off by talking about why NSX, what are customers doing with it, and where are we going with it. So that's vision. A quick overview session for folks who are new to it, in the room or on the streaming audience, and then go into some of the same use cases of why customers use NSX into the next level of detail. So we'll have live demonstrations, some recorded demonstrations of how folks use it for automation, for security, and for app continuity, and then go into some futures around NSX in the public cloud, native public cloud use case, where you're talking about just native Amazon and how do you provide NSX constructs in that. We've talked about that a lot. We'll get to see what we are cooking up there. And then containers, it's all about new apps and containers. We'll go into a little bit more detail about what we are doing in that space. So that's the agenda over the next 4 hours. I'm going to kick it off with NSX vision. But before we get into vision, I thought I'll give you some context into why, what, and where is NSX going. So to get to where, it's important to understand the why and what. So if you look at our strategy, it's all about the application. And in talking to customers, these goals have not changed. It's about securing the app and the data. It's delivering the app faster and making it highly available, right? I mean, that has kind of been the mindset, whether it's a new app or an existing app. That's always been the case. But what's been really interesting has been the change that has been surrounding that application. Number one, from a security standpoint, there's a lot more focus around security because of the way these attacks that are taking place, right? It's no longer folks coming in from the perimeter. It's because somebody's in your data center, lateral movement, and capturing critical assets. And these are no longer attacks on nation states. It's happening with large businesses, IP thefts, and other things. So the attack vector in the data center is changing, and that is affecting how people are fundamentally thinking about security. So that's been an interesting pattern, and that's driving some of the discussion around what do we do with security in the data center. Changes in application architecture. Yes, virtualization has been around, but now increasingly folks are talking about how do I build apps with containers, right? Replatforming my existing apps, building my new apps. And then there is PaaS, which abstracts that whole construct even further, platform as a service. So that in turn is affecting how applications are delivered, and in turn, how networking and security will be delivered going forward. The last piece, but the most important piece, we are an infrastructure company, and networking has been an infrastructure thing for the longest time. If you look at that angle, convergence, hyperconvergence, right? If people are talking about building a block of compute storage network that is repeatable, right? That's a trend that is pretty prevalent in the industry from the likes of VMware, Nutanix, Dell Technologies, and others. Networking is increasingly, I want to build a data center network like the large service providers or like the Googles and Facebooks. The L3 design paradigm, leave spine, keep it simple, keep it routable, right? How do you do that? And then public cloud is here. So customers are going to use the public cloud, whether it's a managed public cloud, whether it's a colo, or it's the Amazon, Google, Azures of the world. So these changes essentially are what's driving some of the discussion, and this is what we are presenting to our customers. What if you could connect, secure, and make the application available across your existing infrastructure, right? So this is existing brownfield deployments, right? No change to the infrastructure. Can I put security in there? Can I put automation in there? While you're building your greenfield infrastructure either on-prem or in the cloud. What if you could tie in security constructs more closer to the application, right? Where when the application moves, the security constructs move with it. And the last piece is, as these application frameworks change, you don't have to completely redesign how you think about network and security. Can you do this across the old and new? And that's what really is driving the conversation in NSX. And what we say is we abstract, automate, and secure. By abstracting constructs on the physical network, we are basically giving these programmable constructs in software available on existing vSphere brownfield environments, as well as folks deploy in greenfield environments, whether it's vSphere or other constructs, right? Whether it's on-prem or cloud. And so that's really been kind of the driving force of the discussion that's been taking place. And because of hyperconvergence, cloud, and new apps, the discussion has changed pretty strongly around the approach. And NSX is one of the approaches that enables you to cover all three constructs, independent of infrastructure. And that's really what's driving some of the momentum we are seeing in the marketplace. So that was kind of the why we are relevant and why folks are talking to us now, even more so than, say, when we started off, right? But what are they doing with it, right? So we always have talked about the three pillars: automation, security, and app continuity. I'm going to give a little bit more of a click into what the projects or use cases within that are, right? IT automating IT is about IT leveraging constructs like NSX to deliver systems to their business faster. So one such customer is California Natural Resource Agency. So they handle fire, they handle water systems, they handle the recreation parks, and they are acting as a service provider to all these different systems and delivering systems automatically, right, with full automation, with vRealize automation and NSX over a shared infrastructure, right? That's IT automating IT, delivering infrastructure on demand to the end users. So that's IT automating IT. Going down, I will talk about developer cloud. This is essentially where you are giving APIs to your developers, and it's a cloud-like experience. So you can consume compute, network, storage on demand. You do this using any of your tools of choice, things like OpenStack, whether it's OpenStack from VMware or a partner of ours. And this is also where you are starting to see some of the work around containers and new applications come about. Multi-tenant infrastructure is service providers, and this is where you see Rackspace, Armor Networks, Armor Corporation delivering, using NSX, a multi-tenant infrastructure to their customers. That's all of our vCloud and network partners and driving that. If you look at security, you've heard of microsegmentation, and microsegmentation is nothing but east-west movement and having a stateful security model around that. But not just the data plane, but how we deliver the entire experience. You can tag workloads saying it's PCI and do PCI in a shared environment, right? So imagine the savings in terms of not having dedicated PCI environments, shared PCI, faster audits, simpler audits, and cheaper, right? That's one example. There are customers using us like Helvetia Insurance in Europe. They protect user data. They're in the business of insurance. They're using NSX to segment off different security zones from each other in software, right? Because east-west security is difficult to implement with physical constructs. It's just difficult to operate. That's the simplicity we bring. In the session after, I think it's after the automation section, Wade Holmes is going to walk you through what and how we do that. DMZ anywhere. If you look at a DMZ, you typically have your physical firewall, you have things like PVLANs, and then you essentially either have multiple DMZs as you start carving out a DMZ, sub-DMZs with PVLANs, multiple networks. Very complex, very difficult to do. With NSX, you still have your physical perimeter, but then within that, you can carve out logical DMZs per project, again, in a shared construct, thereby giving you efficiency and speed like there's never been before, right? But the other interesting piece is, what if you treated your entire data center with a DMZ-like approach? So there is no DMZ. It's like when you design an app, every app, the web front end, is a DMZ, and so you can put not only NSX security, but service chain it with our partner elements, right? The Palo Altos, the checkpoints, the Fortinets of the world, and provide a DMZ-like experience even within the data center. So not just at the perimeter, but within the data center. And that's really the art of the possible. And we are starting to see customers, as they do greenfield deployments, starting to think about that construct. You don't know where the user is coming from. Why not apply that DMZ-like construct closest to the application? And that's where the art of the possible could be. Secure end user, probably the easiest use case for NSX. Virtual desktops, where do they sit? In the data center. So you have two-factor authentication, VPN, all of those things. You get into the virtual desktop. It's a wide open system. What if, based on who you are, your Active Directory user credential, I can lock down what you can access in the data center? If you're an external contractor working on a specific project, imagine I could lock you down just to use the assets of that project, whether virtual or physical. If you're a mobile device, based on what mobile device you're on, using MDM technology, mobile device management from AirWatch, you can lock down what applications you can access in the data center. That's the secure end user experience that we're delivering end to end. Probably the easiest use case around NSX to deploy, because you have a virtual desktop, you layer in the security policy, same network, right? There's no changes from a network standpoint. You're layering in security. Every user has a security envelope around them, controlling access patterns inside the data center. Application continuity, disaster recovery, copy, paste, keep in sync. That's what we do. And you'll see a demonstration of this today, but it's copy the topology from primary location of NSX, paste it in a secondary location, whether it's your own data center, a colo, or another resource like a managed cloud. You paste it over there, and you keep it in sync. DR becomes super easy. Preserving IP spaces doesn't matter. Re-IPing, no issue, right? You can keep your IP space. You can, essentially, if it's the same IP space, you can route it. If it's not, you can add it. Very simple. Copy, paste, keep in sync. And it's orchestrated with your DR tool of choice. If it's VMware, it's Site Recovery Manager, but you can use other tools. We have customers using third-party tools like Zerto, as an example, in conjunction with NSX in their environments. Multi-data center pooling. Closed data centers that are, at, I would say, near distance, right? Less than 10, 20 millisecond latency. You can make them look like one. So we have customers, Kuwait Natural Petroleum Corporation, Bay State Health, I could go on, who have kind of used that construct to pool capacity across data centers and run it active-active. In production, running at scale. And then cross-cloud is essentially, it starts with kind of on-prem VMware, off-prem VMware cloud provider, but increasingly we're going to talk to you about how this applies itself to VMware cloud on AWS. Again, there is vSphere there, but native public clouds. So there's no vSphere. It's a native Amazon VPC. What does NSX do, or what will it do going forward, right? And so if you look at kind of how we have come about these constructs, this is through actual customer deployments, customers telling us these stories, and us learning from that and kind of developing the constructs with them, right? So for each of these, I would say we are at varying stages of the journey, and we continue to improve and increase the velocity of value delivered in each of these sub-scenarios. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the multi-DC pooling. I would like to know if you guys have what would be the max latency that would be required to run multi-DC pooling?
So if the desire is to do things like vMotion, across that scenario, then we are limited by the vMotion limitations, which are right now at.
It's actually as of vSphere 6, 150 milliseconds round trip time. So we have long distance vMotion as well. So this is actually a use case you can start to expand at even greater distances.
Okay.
Right. Now, my recommendation is typically you try and do multi-data center pooling in a more kind of 10 to 20 millisecond scenario, because that's when you have kind of your data replicated in sync, right? And those technologies typically are much more latency sensitive. But the technology and the construct of long distance vMotion allows you to move workloads from up to 150 milliseconds.
Okay, thank you.
Any thoughts, questions, clarity on any of these use cases or scenarios? We're going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail as a follow-up, right? And actually walk through what it looks like and what the experience looks like. So we've now got well over 900 plus deployments of customers. And when I say deployments, it's production deployments, something of value being deployed by the customer. Now, some of the learnings, right, before I go into the vision is, what are we learning from this? And I think it was yesterday or the day before, I think Martin said it that software is faster than hardware, but hardware is faster than organization silos, right? And really, if you forget NSX for a second, the thing that is between us and success going forward, and this is something you will hear us say a lot, is about people, process, and tooling, right? It's not just tooling, but people and process. So if you look at where we were or where we are, we have current app models, we use hosted services, there's vSphere, we've got all these different teams. But where we want to be is be more service-like. We want to deliver new apps faster. We want to use public cloud. We want to do mobile. We've got to build cross-silo teams, people who work across constructs to deliver that service to the business. And I would say the one thing we've learned is when you think about SDDC and SDDC with NSX, this is one of those things in larger organizations which becomes imperative: people, process, and tooling. Tooling we've got. Right? It's the people process. Are we training the folks? Are we giving them enough understanding of what we are trying to do and enough air cover in that? And we can't make those decisions in a vacuum. So we've done a lot of work on this, and we could probably do a follow-up just for like 90 minutes talking about the things we've learned, the different models that customers are using to operate a software-defined data center. But this is something we are working very aggressively with our customers, sharing our insights as part of kind of the deployment of NSX going forward. Any thoughts or questions on this? Make sense? So the last piece, before we get into the vision, is we are a platform. We're not a point product. We are a platform. And so when customers come to us, they come to us and say, hey, great, we like NSX, but how does it integrate with my existing security solutions, my existing monitoring solutions? What are my existing kind of choices and from network integration standpoint? So, of course, you've heard of the security integrations. We have integrations on the physical network now with what is known as OVSDB. It's an open vSwitch database where we program or offload layer 2 gateway functionalities to our partners, the hardware switch vendors. And then there's a host of what I call as automation orchestration vendors is one bucket. So you've got the Pivotal Cloud Foundry, Red Hat OpenShift. You've got now, Kubernetes that's coming up. But there's a set of vendors in the security space, AlgoSec, Tufin, who are doing kind of security management. And so they are also integrating into these constructs to enable that experience for the customer across virtual and physical. So this ecosystem is there, it's growing, and we are working with them to figure out what are the interfaces that they need to further the joint story or the joint stack, right? So we have customers in production deployed with multiples of these customers today in production, right? And so it's one thing to deliver a 1 + 1 = 2, but what we've learned the hard way is how do you take it to production? How do you scale it? How do you kind of handle the whole life cycle around it, right? So now that we are in kind of our third year and running, some of these solutions are starting to come to life at production sites, and that's very exciting. The customer journey is evolving for us, though, right? When we started, it was all about, hey, on-demand infrastructure, automation, brownfield, greenfield, right? Everybody is talking, can I, from a delivery standpoint, folks are saying, I need a service-like experience. This is why you're seeing this emergence of converged infrastructure, hyper-converged infrastructure. Nobody cares about the bits and bytes as much as saying, hey, I want the service, can I get it, right? And we have to do a lot of work to go from on-demand infrastructure to becoming more service-like. And that's kind of part of where you will see us invest and go forward strategy from a development investment standpoint. But where things are really starting to move, and of course it's starting in the larger organizations, is I don't know what the right term is it DevOps, IT, whatever it is, but it's this developer-centric or programmatic model of IT. And so this is going to be a journey. I'm not saying everybody's going to jump from here to here, but this is how I see the evolution in our customer base, and this is where we are focusing our efforts going forward. So if you look at kind of the requirements landscape, in the data center, you've got existing apps. Increasingly, people are talking about cloud native apps. You've got virtual desktops. And there's this thing called NFV, right? And so as VMware, you may know that we participate in NFV by delivering what is known as NFVI. network function virtualization infrastructure. It's our stack delivered to the VNFs that run on top of it. Right? Now that's great, but we also know the trend where folks are moving workloads to the cloud. Estimates are by 2020, it could be 50% of the workloads may be running in some kind of cloud. But the other interesting piece of this is because of this trend where the data center is no longer the focal point, users are coming to this application set either directly to the data center or directly to the cloud. Right? And you've seen this term being thrown around in Silicon Valley now, edge computing. Right? I think we're still trying to figure out what that means. There's the branch, but increasingly folks are starting to talk about, is there an edge? And will IoT and other constructs create this concept of an intelligent edge? So there are things around that space, and our direction is aligned to enabling customers to achieve network security constructs through this vision, whether it's in the data center, whether it's in the cloud, or whether it's at the edge. So with that in mind, getting to the vision piece now, on-prem. Yes, we are VMware. vSphere is our flagship. We do really well in that. But we also support non-vSphere platforms. This is where you saw the announcement with NSX T. Of course, KVM is the other platform we support today. And our intention, as you can see, is bare metal, Hyper-V, whatever the platform may be, depending on customer demand. Right? So the on-prem infrastructure, it's not just vSphere. We understand there are alternates. And as the transition happens or when the transition happens, we are ready to embark with the customer on that journey. End users. We've talked about virtual desktops, mobile device management. How can we take it to the next level in terms of security constructs? How can we introduce constructs like geofencing? When you think about mobile devices, not just what mobile device, but based on location, based on is it jailbroken, not jailbroken, do interesting things from a security posture with our ecosystem going forward. New apps. It's a rage. Everybody was talking about it, right? Doesn't matter to us. Whether you use Kubernetes, whether you use Docker format, all of those things, and Sai is going to talk about this, need to be connected, need to be secured, needs to have a compliance framework around it, needs a common monitoring mechanism. To us, a container, whether it will be a container in a VM or a container on bare metal, is just another VIF, virtual interface or container interface. And could you do this software networking and security with containers much the same way you've done with VMs, whether it's on-prem or it's in native Amazon or in the future Azure or Google. So we think of containers as just another construct, and you will see us how we showcase this while leaving the developer experience exactly the same. Right? That's what matters. You've got to keep that interface interaction look exactly the same, and that's what we are looking to deliver. Public cloud, very simple strategy. We've got partners like IBM who are delivering the VMware experience off-prem. You can essentially get it from them. We're going to deliver that SDDC experience as a service through VMware Cloud on AWS. So that's where I'm presuming everybody understands that. Amazon is providing us the physical tin. We are putting our software on top of it. It's delivered to the customer as a service. It looks like another vSphere cluster in your vCenter. And you can use Amazon services in conjunction with that. Right? So that's really kind of what we are doing from a vSphere-based clouds, our vCloud Air network ecosystem, OVH, IBM, and then VMC on AWS. And you can see that as customers transition to native clouds, right? Folks are going to Amazon directly. Folks are looking to deploy applications in Azure directly. We will provide other constructs, but I'm going to focus on NSX. NSX natively in those environments. Today, we will show you what that looks like in a session. I think it's after the application continuity session. Right? So it is our intention that wherever the application goes, we will deliver network and security constructs in an automated fashion, in a consistent fashion. And the last piece of the puzzle is the branch. And there is a lot of excitement and buzz around this technology construct called SD-WAN. What we are doing is we are working with the ecosystem of vendors over there. There's a lot of startups. There's a lot of existing folks. But really what customers are telling us is the edge and automating that edge And in a lot of scenarios, that edge is either very thin, in which case you can pop an SD-WAN box and do what you're doing. But increasingly, it's about can I have some local compute with some local security elements, with some SD-WAN constructs, and can I get that as a software-defined data center at the edge, right? And so we're working with our customers and the ecosystem to make that experience seamless. Think of it as a pizza, x86 box, ESX, NSX. You service chain your security vendor of choice. You've got local compute, so you could run an app. It could be a point-of-sale app that is PCI compliant. And then as you go out, you hit your partner of choice from a security standpoint, and then your SD-WAN partner of choice, orchestrated in a seamless fashion. That is a little bit kind of where we need to go, right? We are doing this today. We're doing this today. We are doing this to some extent. The new apps today, we're going to improve that experience further. Cloud is coming, as Pat has said, second half with things like VMware Cloud on AWS and NSX in cloud. And then branch is something we're working with our customers, partners, channel partners to figure out the delivery model for. Right? So that's kind of in a nutshell why, what, and where we're going with NSX.